The war on Gaza comes on the 106th anniversary of the Balfour Declaration, which changed the lives of Palestinians forever. So what was that declaration? Well, for centuries, the Ottoman Empire controlled Palestine until it was conquered in 1917 by advancing British troops during the First World War. The British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour wrote a letter to a prominent member of the British Jewish community saying his government was in favour of the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. Well, at that time, only 8% of Palestine's population was Jewish. The letter also said nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. But after the war ended in 1918, the newly created League of Nations mandated Palestine to British control, with the language of the Balfour Declaration written in it. And in 1948, after the Second World War, British occupiers left Palestine. The newly formed United Nations declared the creation of the State of Israel. More than 700,000 Palestinians lost their land. Mahjoub Zawahiri joins us here in the studio. He's a professor of Middle East politics at Qatar University. Good to have you with us. So when you look back on this, it's hard not to say that Balfour laid the foundation of conflict in the Middle East, isn't it?
Absolutely, Sami. There are three major events. If you put them together, they basically lay down the whole issue of what's so-called the Palestinian cause. One is Balfour Declaration 1917. And before that was Sykes-Picot Agreement 1916, and the last one was San Remo Agreement in 1920. Those three events together, they put what's so-called today the idea of having a home for Jews in Palestine. The declaration itself is fascinating because the British, they have no right, no control in Palestine. They gave what they don't have to the people they don't have the right actually to occupy the land. So that was significant. But at that time, we have to remember, there were three main powers at that time, Russia, British, and the French. And the three countries together, they have all of these arrangements behind the closing door, and we found out later about them.
Looking at it, the Balfour Declaration, was it really a colonial project, a European colonial power promising to give a land to a movement primarily comprised and led by European non-natives?
Yeah, the idea was clear, Sami, at that time. The debate in Europe was about how to divide the legacy of what's so-called the sick man of Europe, which Ottoman Empire at that time. And the debate was very clear. How can the three countries divide that legacy?
And in a way that serves colonial interests, of course. It's not in a way that really serves natives, right?
The context is colonization. Those three forces, those three powers, are a colonized power. And they divided the land of what's so-called the Levant in that context. And they left Palestine in a way that without a political status, so they can facilitate the project of establishing a state for Jews.
It's a jarring contrast to the very high anti-immigrant sentiment sweeping the UK and European countries when you look back and see...
Actually, they opened the door at that time. They opened the door, they facilitate.
Right. For mainly a lot of Europeans to go and establish a state, something... Definitely European powers wouldn't like to see anything along those lines, let alone just immigrants coming to live peacefully, let alone establish a state in Europe.
You know, Sami, in the second week of this battle now, I think one of the secretaries in the UK was asked by the media outlet about whether they would allow Gazan people to come to the UK. He couldn't say yes. He said, UK is different, and he was actually escaping with the answer. So it was obvious that, you know...
The double standards.
Double standard, it's very clear.
What was okay for us to give away for Middle Easterners to have to accept? We wouldn't want even 1% of it.
Nothing can describe this but the dehumanization and disrespect to the others. Nothing can be understood.
Do you think the current UK government is living up to its moral obligations given this history, when you look at the positions taken by Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister?
It's obvious that since the UK basically left the European Union, everything is falling apart economically, politically, and Corona has, did have a great impact, did affect all of this. It's obvious that there's a lot of debate now about the UK when it comes to the foreign policy. They are following the Americans 100%, and there is also economic problems, and there is a lot of debate about where the UK is going with all of this, this legacy of being a colonized power.
Since we're talking about countries failing to live up to their moral obligations, we've got to talk about an interesting development that happened. We saw one Arab country withdraw its ambassador for Israel, but we've seen 3 South American countries withdraw their ambassadors or cut relations. Is there also something to be said about the jarring contrasts here and the weakness of the Arab diplomatic stance?
Absolutely,
right now?
Simon. I mean, those countries who have a diplomatic ties with Israel, they have a perception of what's happened in Gaza. The perception is Hamas is involved. And Hamas, what's Hamas? Hamas is an Islamic movement. Hamas Islamic movement is linked to the Muslim Brotherhood. And those countries, they already looked at the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. So it's about the perception and which dominate the political decisions.
The Palestinian people are much bigger than
Absolutely. I mean, it's
movement.
obvious. The PLO was rejected. Communists were rejected. Liberals were rejected. It's the idea of resistance. The resistance is not accepted, is rejected. And as long as someone resisting, even if he's a liberal, he will be rejected.
All right. Thank you so much, Matthew,
pleasure,
for coming in. Well, still ahead on Al Jazeera, Jordan takes diplomatic action, as I was mentioning, against Israel. The government